Assalamu alaikum girls. Welcome to week 6 of term 3. Inshallah, this week is the week we are starting practical topics on word processing. So, before we start off, I have some instructions for you. One is that you need to have Microsoft Word installed in your computer, which should be either version 2016 or above. So, make sure that you have Word, the app Word installed in your laptop, and let's get started. So, today, being the introductory lesson, we will go through some basic formatting and page layout, many of which you might already be familiar with. But inshallah, next week onwards, we will cover more new topics in Word. And it is very compulsory that for the practical homework you will be getting, you need to have Microsoft Word installed in your computer. So, make sure this is fine this week. As starter for today's lesson, I have a word wall activity for you. So let's see what that's about. There's a starter over here, which is a matchup. So let's try playing the game. There are 4 pictures over here and 4 titles. You need to put the picture on the correct title. For example, these are icons in Word. You need to say what the icon stands for. So here it says font size. We know this is the one used for font size. Center alignment, yes, you're right, it's this one. Insert shapes, this one. Insert a picture, this one. Let's submit our answers and check if it's correct. Yes, mashallah, these answers are correct. So I will give this to you for practicing as well. Going back to our PowerPoint. The objectives we are covering today is we will find out how you will format text in Word, how we are going to organize page layout in Word, how we will set up any page setup in Word. We are going to look at what are the ways of inserting header and footer and how you can add even page number in your header or footer. We will understand what is the difference between line spacing and paragraph spacing. We are going to see how you can indent your paragraphs in Word. We are going to learn a new topic called gutter and you will understand what this is. And we will also try to format page into columns and insert column breaks. So starting off, first we need to see what are the basic formatting of text that Word provides. So let's look at all these options in Word one by one. So you can see I have a sample demo file over here, and these are the format options under the font category in the Home tab. So this is something you will very commonly be using, as well as the paragraph group under the Home tab. This is very commonly used. For example, you know this is the font. It sets the font of your text. If you want to change the font, you select on the text and come and change your font. Another thing you can do is change your font size, which you will do using the font size option over here. For example, I can make it bigger to 12. See, my text became bigger now. You can also change the font size to the next bigger or the next smaller by using these two options: increase font size and decrease font size. For example, the font size is 12 now. When I press here, it becomes 14, bigger. When I press here, it goes back to 12 again. Another option you have over here is sentence case, lowercase, uppercase, capitalized, toggle case. This is when you want to change the case, which means capital and small letter, into any of these options. For example, you typed up this sentence and then you realize all of this should have been in capital. So what should you do? Press over here and go to uppercase. That will make all of them capital. You can go through and figure out what the other options here do as well. And these are options you've already used before. This is for bold, this is italics, this is for underline. These are for crossing out. You can see the text is crossed out. This is for superscript and subscript when you have mathematical calculations. This is for text highlighting. So for example, I want to highlight a text to show that this is an important part. I will do this. For example, you want to change some font color, then that would be changed over here. You can see the font color is changed. Okay, I undid that function. Now let's see what else is there in the paragraph group. In the paragraph group, you have some bullets over here. When you want to use bullets, you have bullets but with numbering. So the bullet options are with shapes, whereas the number option is a bullet but with numbers, right? And then you also have your alignment here, and the rest of these things we will look at it one by one. Let's go back to our slide. So these are the main formatting text options that you need to be aware of. Then we need to have a look at what are all the alignment options available for us in Word. Let's see. The alignment options are four. There is a right left alignment, which is the one by default because English is left aligned by default. Then you have an option of align center. So this aligns it to center. Then there is an option called align right. You would use this if you are typing in Arabic, for example. And there's also an option called justify. Let's see what justify tries to do. For example, I have a paragraph over here, two paragraphs. I'm selecting two paragraphs. And as you can see right now, these paragraphs end in different positions. Can you see? This is like a staircase. And over here also the paragraph end in different places. When I put justify and just normal justify, it makes sure that both the sides, the paragraph ends at the margin. Can you see this is perfectly aligned now? So this is what justify does for us. It distributes our text evenly between the margins. Alright, so these are the four formatting options we have for alignment. Now let's look at the important new things you are studying today, which is to change page layout by changing the page size and the page orientation. So let's go back to our file first. For example, I will zoom out and show you what my page looks like at the moment. From your experience, you can tell me what kind of layout this is. Let's check if you are right. I go to page layout tab now. Previously we were in home tab. In the layout tab, there is an option called orientation and size. What orientation does is say whether your file is in portrait mode or landscape mode. Portrait, as you can say, is like this, and landscape like this. As of now it's in landscape. Let's change it to portrait. See, now it's a portrait mode. Another thing you can do is change the size of your page. So for example, I want to change my page size. Currently it's an A5 paper. Maybe I want to print on A4, so I change my size to A4. So this becomes a normal A4 size paper. Alright. Let's see what are the other options we have in page layout tab. As you can see, other than orientation and size, there is also an option called margin. And sometimes the question will specify for you how much margin needs to be there. Margin means on this side, this side, this side and the bottom side, how much space is left. For example, you can see here too much left margin is there. So how can we change this? Let's go to margin, and margin has an option called moderate, wide, mirror, office default. But there's also an option called custom. Custom, if I press on it, it will help me, the custom margin over here, it will help me to put whatever values I want for the margins. You can see here margin, top, bottom, left and right. I can specify what value to put here. These numbers you can see they have a double quote over here. The double quote means that these values are in inches. So the inches measurement is used here. So for example, I want to make it 1 inch. I would change here. I'm changing the top margin now. You will see that this top space is changed. Let me show you one more quick example of changing a margin. So for now you can see the left margin is very big. Let's make it very small so we can see the difference. Go to layout, margin, custom margin. This is the left margin under left. Let me change it to 1, but this time not in inches. This is for inches. I'm going to do 1 centimeter, and let's see, because 1 centimeter is much smaller, right? So we should see a very small left margin. Press OK. See, the margin is changed now. Alright, so this was our second example for margin. Now let's go back to our slides. The next thing, we have already covered what margins are. You can see clearly here, this is the top margin, right margin, left margin and bottom margin, and we changed it as the instructions show here. The next thing we are going to do is inserting a header and a footer, and let's see how this is done now. As you know, a header is something that is as a heading and it comes on every single page. A footer comes at the bottom of a page and comes in every single page. So let's see how we can insert a header and a footer. Inserting header and footer is actually in the insert tab. So go to insert and then go to header and footer group over here. This has the header, footer and page number option. So you can see, first let me try to add a header. I press on header and there are many options that come up. In the options that come up, always the one you use is this one, blank 3 columns. Click on it. The reason we use this is because sometimes the question will say insert a header where your name comes on the left side. So here there is already a left, middle and right. So we can just put your name here and then you are done. Sometimes the question will say make a header where your class is on the right side. So I will put my class over here and then I'm done. So whatever you don't need, just backspace it out and then your header is complete. And you will see this header will actually come in every single page. So let's have a look. This is page number 2, there is header here. This is page number 1, there is header here. Now let me try to add a footer. You will do the exact same thing. Go to the insert tab and the header and footer group. This has footer over here. Choose the option footer. It has many subcategories here. Which is the one you will use? Yes, the blank 3 columns. Once I've inserted my footer as 3 blanks, you can see the 3 columns come here. And just like we did header, whatever you type here will come on the footer of every page, and you can type in the left or middle or right as you need and backspace the others out. Now for example, the question says write your class as the left header and then in the middle write the page number. So suppose I write the page number as 1 for example and I get rid of this. What will happen? This 1 will come in every single page. But is the page number of every single page 1? No. So you need to have some other way where you write a footer but the page number comes correctly for each page. What you will do for that is, wherever you want your page number to be, first make sure your cursor is there. Then go to insert and along with the header and footer there is another option called page number. If you choose page number and choose current position, why current position? Because our cursor is already in the place we need a page number. And then choose plain number. This will put a page number on each correct page. Let's see if this worked. Number 1 page, number 2 page, number 3 page and all coming in the footer in the middle. So this is the way you do it. Alright. Now let's go back to our slide again and see what formatting we need to study next. We already went through page number, insert, page number, current position. So we have a demo task for today which is on a new file called Smartphone Wars, Apple versus Samsung. On this file I am going to do this question. So let's look at what the questions are and then we will open our file. The first thing we need to do is change the page orientation from landscape to portrait. So I'm sure you remember how to do this. Then we need to change the margins. The right and left margin should be 1.2 but centimeter, see, and top and bottom should be 1 but in inches. The next thing we need to do is insert your name in the header in the top right column, which we know how to do, and then insert a page number in the footer in the center. Alright. So let's keep this question open and then open the file we need. I'm going to close the current demo file and then I will open this file mentioned in the question, which is Samsung versus Apple. So I have the Samsung versus Apple file over here. I will double click to open it. So this is the file we have. Alright. What's the first question? The first question says change the page orientation from landscape to portrait. So where will you find that option? In layout tab, not in home tab, in layout tab. So go to layout, orientation, landscape. Now you can see it became landscape. The next question says set your margins as per the following. Right and left margin should be 1.2 centimeter. Margin is also in the layout tab. You can see margin over here. Which is the option we use? Custom margin, because custom margin allows us to change all the 4 margins. And what are the values we need? Right and left should be 1.2 centimeter. So go to right, make it 1.2 cm, left also 1.2 cm. What were the top and bottom values? 1, but this time inch. So make it 1 an inch. You can see it's already 1 inch. If you simply leave it as 1 or you put a double quote, it means 1 inch. So I'm going to press on OK, and now I have the correct margin set. The next question says insert your name in the header on the top right. So as you know, header is over here, and header is and footer are inserted from the insert tab. So I go to insert, header, footer is over here. Let me do header first. Which is the option we use? Blank 3 columns. And where do they want our header to be? The name in the top right. So top right is over here. So put your name over here. And then you will get rid of these 2 because you don't have anything over here. Next, the question says you need page number in the footer at the center. So to insert a footer, we again go to insert, footer, 3 column. This time we want the center, so get rid of right and left. And what do we want in the center? We want page number. So place your cursor there, then go to insert, and next to header and footer there is option called page number. Come to page number, choose the option current position, normal number. Now your page number has also been successfully added. So this is your completed demo task. Let's move on now that we are done with the demo task. The next thing we are studying is the 2 font types in Word or any Word application. The 2 font types we have available are called serif and sans serif. Serif are those fonts which have little ticks at the end of each letter. So for example, you can see these little tick marks, these tick marks. This means it's a serif font. And what are sans serif fonts? Sans serif fonts are those which don't have that. They just have straight edges. They don't have tick marks, right? So remember this, serif fonts have tick marks and sans serif fonts have straight edges. An example of a serif font is Times New Roman. An example of a sans serif font is Arial. You can see Arial has straight edges. So when you come to your Word, over here, all the fonts you have can be categorized into these 2 categories. So for example, let's look at a few. I'm choosing my paragraph and let's put this font. Does this have a tick or not? It doesn't have a tick, right? So this is a sans serif font. Let's put another font. Let me try this one for example. You can see this has small ticks at the end of each letter. So this is a serif font. Alright. Going back to our slide now. Another thing we are going to learn today is line spacing. You saw this in the beginning when we started with the home tab. So let's go back to the home tab over here. In your paragraph group, this option we hadn't looked at it before because this is the line and paragraph spacing. Let's look what is line spacing first, then we will see what is paragraph spacing. Line spacing, like it says, chooses how much space is there between lines of the same text, right? So for example, this is a paragraph by itself. For example, this is a paragraph, and in this paragraph, if I choose the line spacing as 1, can you see that the space between the lines is reduced? Now it increases, 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 and much more increases, right? This is called line spacing. And what is paragraph spacing? Paragraph spacing means between this first paragraph and the second paragraph, how much space is here in between. And how do we set that? We select the paragraph we want and go to this tiny tick arrow over here, because this is the paragraph settings. Under paragraph settings, you have an option called spacing before the paragraph, spacing after the paragraph. Here, if you write what spacing you need, that space will come before and after each paragraph. So for example, after this paragraph, I want 9-point space. PT means point. This is another unit used. Now you can see that after this paragraph, extra space was put. So these are the two options of line spacing. Line spacing comes in numbers like this, and you also saw the example of paragraph spacing, before and after, because a paragraph has a before and an after, right? So these two spacing can also be set. The other thing we are going to study today is indentation. You must have come across this word in English. In English, when you start a new paragraph, you are generally told to leave some indentation space to start the new paragraph. So the same thing you can do in Word, and I will show you what this looks like. Indentation is basically how much space you are after the margin. So for example, I have this paragraph over here, and these are the options to increase indent and decrease indent. As you can see, there are two arrows over here. This arrow moves farther away from the margin, which means it's an increasing indent, and this arrow decreases your indent because your paragraph is moved closer to the margin. Let's try both the indentation. See, this is moving closer. You don't see anything because it's maximum close as possible, and this moves it more away from the margin. Alright. If you are given a number for indentation, for example, you are not told to just increase or decrease, but you are told the indentation should be 3 point, for example. Then how will you set a specific indentation? Go to the paragraph settings again. This is what you used before, the spacing. Above that, there is an option called indentation. Indentation before the text and after the text. If you make your indentation before the text as 1, let's say 5 centimeter, for example, this will create extra indent over here. So this is what is the meaning of indentation. I will show you a quick example of where this can be used. For example, you have some bullet points, and normally a bullet point always comes after indentation from the margin. But if your question specified that you don't, all your bullet points must be on the margin, then you can see here we need to decrease this indentation. So to decrease this indent, what we will do is come to indentation and add that before the text there should be 0 centimeter, there should be no indentation at all. Then you will be able to align it towards the margin. The other thing we are studying today is what's a gutter. A gutter is actually a special type of margin which is added to the page layout to compensate that part of the paper which is made unusable by binding. All of you have done some binding for your textbooks or your folders, etc. And you know that on a page, when binding is done, some part of that page gets used up, right? This much part is getting used up. So you need to leave some space for this, and this is called the gutter margin. How can we set gutter margin? This is the same as where you set the margins. I will show you an example. If you remember, margins were set in layout. In layout, we had an option called custom margin. In custom margin, previously we were changing these bottom, top, left and right. There's also an option called gutter. If you specify the gutter position, this is like specifying where your binding is going to be. Are you going to bind the book on the left side, on the top or on the right? And how much gutter space you need. Do you need 0.5 of an inch, 1 inch, etc. So this is very useful if you are going to print out all your papers and then use it for binding. You can see that more space was created on this side. Alright. Now let's go back to our slide. We saw indentation and gutter already. So your task for today is to work on this file called N10EKS. This file is provided to you on Edmodo. It is a document about a sports company called PowerKite Sports, and on this file you need to do all the following tasks on this page and this page. So you can see there are some tasks over here. All these tasks need to be done on PowerKite Sports. So starting with question number 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 up to 14, 15 up to 23, these things need to be done on your N10 EKS. So let's have a look at what this file looks like. I have the N10 EKS file here. You will also find this on your Edmodo. This is the file you have, and all the tasks given over here need to be done on it. I am going to show you some of these tasks as an example, but of course you need to do all the tasks in order, which means first you have to use a suitable software package, which means Word in our case. Load the file n10eks.rtf. I already loaded it. Load means open it. Then the next task is saying you have to set the page size to A4. I'm sure you remember this. Go to layout, size, it should be set to A4. Right now it's A5. Similarly, you have to do all the tasks one by one. I will show you some of the few that are harder for you to do. For example, saving the document with a new file name to your work area. That means go to File, Save As, and give it a new name, which is your name, and save it in a new folder. I will show you some other things that you might find difficult. For example, set all the text to single line spacing. This means select all the text first. You can also press Ctrl and A together, and then go to Home, because Home has the line spacing option, and under line spacing choose 1, because single line spacing means 1. The other things you need to do is set the alignment to be justified. We already saw how this is done. Header and footer, you already know how to do this. Making sure there is a blank line 10 points high after each paragraph and that the line spacing is consistent. This question means that after every paragraph we need a 10-point space after each paragraph. So select all your text again. Paragraph spacing was put from here. Go here. Go to paragraph spacing before and after. We want 10 points after every paragraph. So here make it 10 pt. This is the way you put a 10-point space. See, immediately a space was created after each paragraph. Then the question says insert a blank line at the start of the document and enter this given heading, which means on top just put an enter space and write the heading given. The heading says EKS Club News, so I am going to write that as given in the question. And then it says set its font size, then add the text report by, add your name, place this as a subheading below the heading. So I will quickly show you how that's done. Report by, and then add your name over here. Then it says set both the heading and subheading to any sans serif font. So find any font that does not have the ticks, it has straight edges, then do italic, font size, underline and right align. All of these are very simple things for you to do. So all of that should be done on this N10EKS file, which you will save as a new file name and upload back on Edmodo. As plenary for today's lesson, I have some quick questions for you based on what we covered in this video. In which tab do you find header and footer? Do you remember? Let's check in Word. We find header and footer in the Insert tab. The Insert tab has header and footer. Next question. Which option should we use for header and footer always? Which is the option we should use? Yes, the blank 3 columns option. So when you do insert header, don't use anything else except blank 3 columns. The next question asks what is a gutter. If you remember, gutter was from layout, margin, custom margin. Gutter was over here. Gutter is that space you need to leave for a binding on any page if the paper is going to be taken for binding. What is the difference between line spacing and paragraph spacing? If you remember, line spacing is over here in the home tab under paragraph. Line spacing, these are the options: single, double, triple, and paragraph spacing is from here. Press on the small arrow, paragraph spacing before and after. Line spacing will change the space between lines and paragraph spacing will change the space between paragraphs. The last question says differentiate between the two font types. The two font types you have is sans serif and serif. Serif fonts are those which have little ticks at the edge of each letter. You can see this R is having a little tick mark over here. And sans serif, sans actually means it does not exist, nothing. So it's not serif. Sans serif are those fonts which have straight edges. For example, Arial. Just learn 2 examples so that if it's asked in the question, you can put the correct type of font. That's all for today, girls. I hope your assignment is an easy one for you this time and you get back to us with a successful homework. Take care. Assalamu alaikum.